Roberto, has visto alguna vez la película La Mosca? Bueno, para resumir, es un chalupa cabra.
Check 2. Hello. Hello. Hello.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
There is the man that would lose disastrously to a goose. Take a long look at him, for he soon will be taken by the stretched wings of death.
Dimitri, thank you for the 200 friend coin. Not gonna respond to any of that kind of slander. Okay, I'm not gonna dignify that with a response. I appreciate the 200 friend coin, but we're not gonna get into that. Thank you, King Uendo, as well, for the 27 months of tier 1 and all the support you've shown the channel, King Uendo. Thank you. Has visto alguna vez la película La Mosca? Bueno, para resumir, es un chalupa cabra. I would say same to you. Sometimes I can sort of make out Spanish from just reading it, but this is not one of those times. And I know chalupa cabra feels like it was a mistake. La Mosca, is that the fly? Okay. I have seen the fly. That's right. Classic. Goose gets cooked way too easily. How are y'all afraid of an animal that has a weak point, such as a 1.5 neck, that you can whip its own ass with? Marty, I don't understand these people. I don't agree with your take about No Country for Old Men. Well, that's what we've come to expect from who we know as Movie Take Marty. But I thank you for backing me up on that, though. I was part of a summer league softball team and we were the Chupacabras and people hated us. Thank you, Lennon Smesh. Chalupa Cabra is Taco Bell's cryptid mascot. Yeah. I should be on a summer league softball team. I should be on a summer league softball team. That could be a thing for me, I think. I could pivot to doing that kind of stuff. I got another soup. I'm just ready for that egg getting to be good, getting to good consistency. Oh, here's something fun. Here's something fun that we can start off the stream with. Are you ready for this? Oh shit. That's right. I got a little piece of mail today. Got something in the mail. In fact, I think it was there yesterday, but when I went to check, I didn't bring my key for the actual mail box. They never put anything in the mail box. All the packages and stuff are always just like randomly around the entrance to this building, so I didn't check in the actual mail box, and today I did, and lo and behold, I found a little something. I don't play in a summer league softball team, but I do the play-by-play for a tournament every summer. I get very drunk while doing it. That sounds fun too. I would like to do play-by-play commentary as well. I think I would be good doing wrestling commentary. You know, I wonder if I got to look into what Drew Onyx is doing from the Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo, because for a while he was putting on indie wrestling shows all the time. I bet I have a big enough platform that if I wanted to muscle my way into the broadcast team for that, maybe I could. Maybe I could do that. Maybe that could be another late career pivot for me, pivoting into all kinds of interesting stuff. Synth pop artist and wrestling commentator. You know, I have been be a great manager. That's right. I've been thinking also, like, lately about maybe I should just go get like forklift certified. Maybe work yourself into an angle. That's right. Absolutely. I think I could get there. I've been thinking about just getting forklift certified because, you know, like, I really love doing this stream. I love being in independent media. I've worked really, really hard to like be able to make a small living from doing independent media, and I'm very proud of that, and I love doing it. But there are times, I gotta say, when it's like, you know, it'd be kind of nice to like be in a union and to have like a salary, and also to have a job that's not like doing team meetings or doing marketing or any of the, or sending emails or any of that shit, but just like to go to a factory or a dock or whatever. It's just like, move this pile like over here and just focus on doing that. And to be able to pay like a salary and be in a union and have benefits and all that kind of stuff would be really nice. Spreadsheets, that's right, yeah. I'm not a spreadsheet person. I can't do that. Forklift work can be hell on your back, but my old boss on the dock used to be able to flip a penny with the fork, no unskilled labor, etc. You could be a big rig driver and stream while driving. I could do that as well. I've been thinking about something like that, you know. Like I said, I love doing this stream, and I'm going to continue doing this stream. I love being in independent media and podcasting and all that stuff. But it would be nice to have like an actual salary, you know? That's all. Having a salary and, you know, like benefits, vacation time, that kind of stuff. You know? It'd be kind of nice. It'd be kind of nice to have that. Anyway, let's take a look at this. What's this? What is this? I guess I should have done I wasn't really opening, I was kind of opening the package off camera, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I've received in the mail a hat. I've received a hat in the mail. It was made by our friend Clueless on VHS. We love and stand the Outrun and Clueless on VHS family. Big part of this community. And my Clueless hat has finally arrived. Finally, I say, after, you know, who is counting, but like, you know, let's say 18 months of you know, thinking about it. Marty's been subbed since April 23rd, 2021. So it's here now. That's the most important thing. It's here now. So who's even counting? Who's even counting? Okay, we ready for this? Here we go. Very exciting moment. I feel like it needs to be more back like this, you know? Does it need to be like this? What do we think? I think it needs to be more back. You to show the hairline, yeah.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Cheers.
Thank you, Christine Doe. Thank you, Christine, for the 200 friend coin. Cheers to you as well, Christine. Thank you. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hat Rob, 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 hat Rob.
Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches for the 26 months resub at tier 2. Thank you. You could roll it up a bit, but it's already kind of like naturally rolled a little. I like it. I was chanting. Thank you, 10,000 sandwiches. I feel good about this. The fit is good. The fit is good. It fits very well. Lumumba died today. I saw today was the day he was assassinated. I didn't realize that, but it would be a natural extension, I think, of some of our talk about MLK yesterday. Yeah, I got a big head too, Lennon Smash. Big head have over here is also. Too many brains, that's right. Do you know what I spent? I spent all morning. I guess in retrospect, it was kind of a waste of time because one thing that I really realize I have to do, Lodane's been pushing me on this lately as well, but I need to start taking clips from this show and editing them into TikTok videos and putting them on TikTok. I got to be putting out like 4 or 5 TikTok clips a week at least of this show. And in any given show, there's always 2 minutes of something that could be clipped and turned into a little TikTok video. I really need to grow. Like, I'm talking about why I need to get a union job. Like, I do need to. One of the things I need to do this year is grow this stream. I need to grow this stream a little bit. I'm extremely happy with where the stream is at. I love this community. I know I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I know for how long I've been doing this, I'm very fortunate to have a community of this size. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. But I would like to grow the stream a little bit this year. And maybe make it a little bit easier on both me and people in the community who are supportive of the channel. And one way that I think I need to do that is by taking clips of the stream and putting them on TikTok. So I spent all morning like going over the stream yesterday trying to find a clip that I could put. And I found a couple of things, but I felt weird. You know, I was kind of talking about MLK yesterday. I was kind of in like kill Whitey mode yesterday. He'll be crying himself to sleep tonight on that huge pillow. That's right, Prax said it. That's right. You know, and maybe I felt a little weird being my first clip, being like going on like this rant with a picture of MLK. I don't know. I felt kind of crass. I felt kind of crass doing a clip of me doing one of these rants, talking about how the MLK statue is like an insult to his memory and stuff like that. It does seem like a lot of leftist posts gets banned from TikTok. I saw a tweet from Hassan yesterday about how like basically every time he does have a viral TikTok, he immediately gets mass reported and banned. But you weren't wrong. Of course I wasn't. Yeah, of course I was not wrong. But man, I wasn't sure which way to go with that. But I am going to start doing that, though, because I really do need to grow this stream. I really, really do. Or I'd like to try a little bit more, you know? So I don't know. I spent all morning kind of trying to figure that out. I found this cross clip app that does seem to like do those fairly easily, crops it properly and all that stuff. But then I just couldn't find a clip that I wanted to go with it, that I wanted to use. Do they ban communist content or leftist content? I just think they ban anything that like becomes on the left, that becomes popular enough. It inevitably gets mass reported. Like I know Eddie from Midwestern Marks, that's how I discovered him, was on TikTok. He does really good like anti-imperialist TikToks and talking about socialism and geopolitics, and inevitably when he started talking about Ukraine and it started getting big TikToks talking about that, inevitably just gets mass reported by people. historically is on their third or fourth account. Yeah, it's like ridiculous. What do we think about the hat? I really like the hat, but I don't know whether I should keep it on for the stream or not. What's your stance on that, Chad? What's your stance? What are we thinking? I got my ramen here. As I said, yesterday was my first time getting one of these Shin Ramen like bowls, and it really is kind of a game changer. It's really good. That's right, it's the spicy one. And it's quite spicy, like very, not too much, but it's very satisfying. Very satisfying. Especially washed down with an ice cold Diet Coke. Oh boy. I was an absolute flavor country. And I'm soon to be yet again. I threw another egg in there. You can kind of see. I don't want to spill the broth. I put some more water this time, so the egg is looking good. Yeah, the egg is perfect. So don't mind me. It's going to be enjoying my ramen for just a few minutes. Enjoying my ramen. I need a new lunch game. I've eaten the same lunch for like 2 years. What's your lunch, HTA? What's your go-to lunch? PB&J yogurt with honey. I mean, that sounds nice, but yeah, that's something I wouldn't want to eat that for 2 years straight, definitely. That sounds like a perfectly enjoyable lunch, but 5 hot dogs. Are you saying that's your lunch, Lennon Smash? Or are you saying that's what you want me to do as content? I mean, I'm a big hot dog proponent. That seems to me like too many hot dogs, though. I've just switched up on my breakfast with some prepped rice and then fry 2 eggs over medium real quick. Could absolutely work as a lunch depending on if you work from home or not. Love eggy rice. Eggy rice is just a great meal for breakfast or lunch or dinner. You get some hot sauce or some chili sauce in there. Really good stuff. Sticks with you, yeah, for sure. That's a great breakfast. Carbonara Americanized is my go-to meal. Like for lunch? We're talking lunch here? What's Americanized? Is that like with cream? You throw in some cream into noodles? Some bacon? What are you talking about there? Just any time. Okay. Bacon, no cream. All right. I don't know if I'm ready to have a carbonara breakfast, but I mean, that's still a yummy meal. It's true. I'm really I'm getting to the point where I'm really looking forward to my dying soda. my diet soda. Oh boy, that's a Freudian slip if I've ever heard one. That is a Freudian slip if I've ever heard one. Jesus. It's because when I start reading, I'm talking and reading at the same time. Yes. Yes, I'm fine. I was just reading and talking at the same time, and you're talking and you go into autopilot and you start saying all kinds of wacky shit. I am, though, looking forward to my ice cold diet soda. My ice cold Diet Coke is going to hit the spot after this spicy noodle soup. I'm realizing I need a napkin of some kind. Spilled some egg on my pants. I like this hat. I like the hat, and I can already tell it's very warm. Thank you to Clueless on VHS for the hat. As I was talking shit about it, which was very mean considering you knitted a hat for me, but I do appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Jake Hager. I like this hat. It's amazing that he's like a former world champion and got this huge push when he was first in WWE, and now he's more over than ever by just being a big himbo who wears a hat. That's his whole character. Hey, Lizard, how's it going? Let me just clean this egg off my pants, then I'll be ready to go. You don't want to see what this stain looks like right now. I got to tell you, it's not looking good. I'll just be right back. I'm glad Rob is wearing pants while streaming. I mean, technically I'm not, because they're actually long johns. So, technically I am not. Just wanted to say that one of the common denominators of me and people who are nice and cool is the love of wrestling. It's true. It do be like that. What's everyone else having for lunch? We heard from HTA. We heard about the eggy rice. It's 1 p.m. Eastern. It's lunchtime for a lot of people around the world right now. What are we working on here? What do you got going? Talk to me. I especially want to hear from the lurkers on this one. Lurkers. If the Twitch algorithm brought you here, I want to hear from you. What are you eating for lunch right now or today? What are you planning on? Teriyaki tofu. Got a Honey Crisp with Sean's name on it. Very nice. Quinoa and black beans. Okay. Lunch and lurk. James got a Royal Gala. I just had some reheated chipotle refried beans and a flour tortilla. Sounds great. French toast and other breakfasty stuff. Leftover pork chops, mashed potatoes. Very nice. Teriyaki tofu. Feta olives and pita. Very good. PB&J with some sweet chili tortilla chips. Okay, very nice. Fried rice and coffee. Another rice haver. Homemade chicken soup with rice. Rice and dal like every other South Asian person. That sounds very good. That sounds very nice. Leftover pâté chinois with loaded mashed potatoes. So, Sinchel, you're in Austin, right? And they call that pâté chinois. In Austin. That's interesting to me. It's not shepherd's pie? I've never heard that outside of Quebec. I suppose, do you even live in Texas? Has Sinchel been on an op this whole time? Really, she's in the next door apartment to me. Just exposed, just panicking right now. Shit. I exposed myself. Really, Sinchel's the CSIS agent that's been assigned to me. I was translating like with Fahrenheit. I see. A likely story. A likely story. Chin chin, everyone. I'm really looking forward to this. Really looking forward to taking a sip of this. Oh. Oh. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that was good. That was as good as I was imagining. Dying soda, Jesus Christ. I can't even get mad at people for repeating that one. That was very well deserved. Very well deserved. No, I'm fine. Thank you. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Dying soda do be hitting after a cup of noodles. Man, that's a great lunch. I love those glasses on you. Thank Risk Inverse. Thank you. These were compliments of the Christopher Clues Eyewear Corporation, the world's only openly communist eyewear brand. And they agree with everything that I say on this program. And when they were getting in touch with me about a sponsorship type thing, I said, I say some pretty controversial stuff on here. Just warning you about that. And they were like, no. It's okay. We've seen that and we agree with it. We've seen all that stuff, all the stuff about Ukraine, all the stuff about the Soviet Union, China. We agree with it and we're completely on board. And we co-sign every single opinion you have. Not only does Christopher Clues do that, as does the other sponsor of this program, the Coca-Cola Corporation. Also co-signs every single belief that I have and every single thing that I say in this show. All the Korea stuff? Absolutely. Didn't they used to be Danish? I believe they still are Danish, yes. I believe they still are. I like the lemon badge tint. Trying to get back into my good graces. Trying to make a lemon badge a thing. That's good. Okay. Not totally sure what we're going to do today. When was the last time you had a rain? I did have one on Sunday. I must admit. I mentioned this yesterday. I had a white gummy bear rain yesterday. Or Sunday. I was forced to. Sorry, I missed a lunch comment here. Just eating a wrap with leftovers. Going to Montreal this weekend, though, and I need food recommendations beyond the same 3 places annoying tourists from Ontario go. Okay, Eric, I will hit you up with some recommendations. And Groud Never News says, work catered lunch today. Roasted veggies, salad with tarragon dressing, asparagus, ancient grain salad, pasta salad. Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. Now turn off this rain. Excuse me. Turn off this rain alert now. This rain bot. This is unsanctioned. This is unsanctioned advertising going on now. I gotta get, if I would immediately change my tune if I could just get more product from this company. They got me hooked. They got me hooked and then they cut me off. Those devious bastards. I never wrote about my gochujang noodle soup lunch. You know what, Pry Bars? I apologize for that. And the only reason was because I panicked on trying to pronounce the word. And then I moved on and then I forgot about it. I'm sorry for not mentioning your lunch, though. Carnova made scrambled a couple of eggs for late-ish breakfast, having them with some sourdough rye crackers I made last week. That sounds wonderful. Ugh. That sounds wonderful. So I think that concludes I think that just about concludes the lunch segment. I do have an apple still to go, but I need to eat eggs more. Whenever I do, I'm reminded that eggs are tasty and nutritious. Eggs are great to just add to things too. You know, you make a fried rice or something, soup. Sometimes you just throw an egg. You just throw an egg on something, and all of a sudden, it just totally transforms it into a different thing. Excuse me. I'm gonna start doing that on mute. I'm a little sweaty now. I'm sweaty from the soup. That's why I had to take off the hat. I got my wool socks and my long johns. I just had my spicy soup, and I'm kind of like a little overheating here now. An egg can turn a regular taco into a breakfast taco, yeah. My girlfriend's sister has a chicken coop, and we got cartons of eggs for free all last year. Then we got a carton that was entirely rotten, now I can't eat them anymore. That doesn't sound nice. That does not sound nice, Eric. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's play some Fortnite. I already went through my Fortnite quota of the day. I was playing this morning. I usually get a 45 minutes or so of game time. Not too long, 45 minutes to an hour of Fortnite in the morning sometimes. And played with Marcus. Marcus from Left Flank Vets. He's in my Fortnite squad, along with Benny, Groms Torino, a couple of others. Got a little bit of a run going with Marcus this morning. I play with Jordan sometime, and he's always playing at different moments. He's more of a nighttime player, and I'm more of a morning guy. That's when I have some time to do gaming. Does Marcus have good tactics? Let's just say I often have to carry Marcus. Okay? Let's just say that. We don't need to get into the details. We don't need to get into the details. We don't want to shit talk anyone. Obviously, I would never do that. Don't be starting beefs. I've told you, I'm out of the beef game now. I'm pulling back. No more beefs over here. You beefed with Ari Emanuel? I guess so. I guess I beefed ever so slightly with George W. Bush's press secretary. That's true. I've been a little bit of a stinker online sometimes on Twitter lately. I've pulled back from even doing that stuff as much, but sometimes I am a bit of a stinker. There was that tweet yesterday. Did you see the tweet yesterday from the woman who was like on it for the, and we talked about how MLK has been whitewashed by the establishment. The woman yesterday that was like, when I was a CIA analyst for 11 years, I had this MLK quote in my email signature every year, and was like trying to get praise from people. A CIA analyst between the years 2013 and 2003 and 2014. When I was working for the CIA during the height of the War on Terror, I had this MLK quote in my signature about being brave. It's like, what are we supposed to do with that? And then I just asked her a basic question, whether, what the CIA was up to during those years. Like, were they doing anything interesting? And I immediately blocked. Yeah, and their only concern was Guantanamo. They were like a closed Guantanamo person. So even though the main thing that you say you support didn't happen, and you were also an analyst for the CIA while they were fucking snatching people and bringing them to like black site torture prisons around the world, not just Guantanamo, but in Pakistan or wherever else you got these black sites. But you had the MLK email sig, so that makes everything all right. It's the woke era. That's right. See, the CIA has gone woke. I was clicking through that CIA tweet looking for anything indicating it was parody, sadly real. Let's see if I can take a look, because I got to go open it in a... Or you know what? Got to open it in a private window because I was immediately blocked from this person. Excuse me. Let me find this tweet here. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Fellow patriots, I have intel that my spring semester is starting up again next Monday, so I will be less frequent with my intel, but I have news that Eric Bischoff is gonna finesse his way into WWE at Robruso.
Coal Mine, thank you so much. Look at that, Coal Mine. 24 months of Tier 1 and 2 entire years of scoops from our deep state operative Coal Mine. Thank you, Coal Mine. Bischoff coming back would be a hilarious outcome to all the WWE stuff happening going on right now. If that scoop were true. Yeah, we said controversy creates cash. It's very true. Shut up. What is this? No, I don't want to log in or sign up. Gail Helt, CIA analyst, 2003 to 14, closed Guantanamo, human rights, China. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. For many years, I was at the CIA. I included this MLK quote as part of my email header. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? Is it right, Gail, for the CIA to snatch people and put bags over their heads and bring them to off-the-books torture prisons in Pakistan, where you attach electrical cables to their genitals and try to get information out of them by torturing them, or waterboarding them, or whatever other devious or horrific means of torture you people have devised over the years as part of your Contra Hen books that you've put out? Was that right? Was it right to do that? Would MLK have approved of that? Would MLK have been comfortable with that? I'm not so sure, Gail. And there comes a time when we must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Gail, of CIA analyst Gail Helt, who was with the CIA from 2003 to 2014. Who believes that MLK would have been really on board with her brave decision to be working for this, one of modern history's most brutal, horrific, and violent organizations, exporting terrorism around the globe. Filling, again, what did the CIA do with the black community in South Central Los Angeles in the early 80s, flooded it with crack cocaine in an effort to, militarily occupy these communities and destroy these communities. The woke CIA. It's only terrorism when they do it to us. Exactly. Exporting terrorism around the globe. Exporting terrorism around the globe. Financing radical Islamic terrorism in the 80s, and then fighting the very same people that you financed and trained 20 years later when Gail herself was an operative with the CIA. Can you provide an example of a decision you made following this rubric? Here's what she said. March 28th marks another key milestone in the War on Terror, the 20th anniversary of the capture of several alleged key al-Qaeda figures, most notably Abu Zubaydah, touted by George W. Bush as al-Qaeda's third in command. In the 20 years that Abu Zubaydah has been imprisoned, I left the PhD program to begin my CIA career, the honor of my life and a career track I now encourage students to pursue. I opted to leave the CIA after more than 11 years because as hard as I tried, I could not make sense of a world in which America would go into such length to justify violating its values. What values? I did not recognize in America where torture was not a one-off, something that was quickly repudiated and prosecuted, but it was stated U.S. policy. I could not comprehend a world in which America had abandoned its defense of the rule of law and became an international violator of human rights. So she was at the CIA for 11 years while this behavior was going on. She's saying to this day that it's the honor of her life to be with the CIA, and still encourages students to take this path. A career track I now encourage students to pursue. So she made such a morally brave choice because of the activities of America during this period, which she was directly implicated in for 11 years, and now still supports and still encourages people to participate in. And she leaves, and we're supposed to think that she's like a modern day MLK. She got bitten for the drinking. Sounds like she's actually not a hero, despite the email signature. That's the thing. It's like, if I don't want to be responsible or implicated in the torture and murder of other human beings, I just simply do not join the CIA in the first place, nor do I still encourage people to do so. Always just wants to see a girl boss taken down. That's right. It is a heroic email signature. That is true. There's no denying that. I don't know. It's really funny that, like, we talked yesterday about how whitewashed MLK had become. And I logged off from talking about this. The way that he's, we talked about the Leninist concept of how these revolutionary figures are completely robbed of their revolutionary potential and held up as examples by the very same bourgeoisie that hounded them and persecuted them while they were alive. And then I logged off from having that discussion. I see Gail from the CIA talking about how she was living up to MLK's values. And right now, even though she's not in the CIA anymore, from her bio, does seem like she is engaged in the campaign to talk about human rights in China. Not at all something that the CIA is also currently doing. Of course. G. Helt. Here she is passing along the stuff from the protests a few weeks ago, encouraging revolution in China. Appears to be standing up. You'd like that, wouldn't you, Gail? She's one of these, she's like a China watcher. But of course doesn't still support or promote the CIA. You see, the person working for the organization perpetuating massive torture campaigns is very concerned about human rights in China. Well, that's it. She left the CIA because of this moral stand. Oh, after a mere 10 years in the organization, during the worst parts of the war on terror, she took this brave moral stance to leave the CIA, while still seemingly supporting every single goal that the CIA continues to have. Yeah, too bad she wasn't one of the ones lost in China. That's right. On that subject, I don't even know if this is real. Like, let me just confirm that this is real. I just want to confirm that this is real before I share any fake news. Which was a post I saw from Ennis Freedom. And I do not think it is. I'm checking Ennis Freedom's account right now. I saw an MLK post from Ennis Freedom, and it seemed too outrageous to be true. And I'm not so sure it is. It is a deeply cursed image, though. That's why I'm doing responsible journalism. Responsible fact-checking before I go spreading fake news. Okay. What do we got next here? I think it could be a breakthrough news day over here. What do we think about that? I really didn't have much of a plan to talk about anything today. But there is a VJ clip. There's a VJ and Rania Kalik clip that we never got to from 2 weeks ago called "Will U.S. Aggression Stop Eurasian Integration or Accelerate It?" What do you think about that? That could be something we could do. Has Ben Norton been covering the Lulag? That's a good question. I'm sure he has been. I really wanted to reach out to Brian Meyer, who writes for Brazil Wire, to talk a little bit about Brazil. There's the Lumumba independence speech. All kinds of stuff we can take a look at. Speaking of Vijay Prashad, his book Red Star Over the Third World will be the Discord's next book for book club. For anyone that's interested, that sounds good. I'm almost finished with Washington Bullets. I've been reading that lately. That's been really great stuff. And in fact, I'm at the segment in Washington Bullets when it talks about how the CIA and the U.S. State Department manipulated global Islam as well to turn it into like a reactionary anti-communist force, which I was mentioning. They ended up having to wage a 20-year war against later on. And there's a clip on that from Breakthrough News as well, with Brian Becker, how the CIA politically manipulates Islam for the U.S. war agenda. It's another video we could possibly watch. Maybe before I start getting crazy about watching any kind of videos or anything, I should eat this apple. Quite literally bit off more than I could chew there. That classic expression. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Huge bite.
Thank you, Maxie. That's right, it was. Thank you for the 18 months tier 1, Maxi. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Sunny Sola, hello. Thank you for the raid, Sunny Sola. I appreciate it. You came right on time. I'm just sitting here eating an apple. This is the content that everyone loves. It is very crisp. Very satisfying. In fact, it's a cosmic crisp. We're ready to get robbed. Okay, you know what? This is just because VJ's been such a big part of the content that we've done on the show, and he's someone else I'm going to reach out to again to bring back. I will get VJ back on the show soon. Ronnie is a friend of the show. I think this is going to be relevant to all the things we often talk about, so let's just go ahead. Let's just go ahead and do this. Okay? Let's watch this VJ and Rania Kalik video. No, not this. Let's do this. I can put this on. I'll eat my apple. We'll have some good discussion. Let's do this. This is a good plan to me.
Do you need
Cosmic
NATO?
crisp, that's right.
Principal adversary has disappeared. Why not disband NATO? People started talking like that. Well, they said, no, you need NATO. It provides security. Because the underlying reason for NATO, which is to prevent a independent European foreign policy to develop and so on, was very strong and had to be maintained.
It's amazing how I mentioned this the other day when we talked about like the whole debate world now. Whether or not we should support NATO is, I guess, a controversial stance now on the left. On Twitch, anyways. Should we support NATO? Should we support NATO this one time? And the idea that not only should we not support NATO, we should be trying to abolish NATO. That's become some subject for debate here on Twitch, on these leftist debate streams. Should we or should we not support NATO? It's really amazing how we've gone in the wrong direction in so many different ways. It's like a controversial stance to be like, no, I don't support NATO. But you mean even in this case of the unjustified, illegal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, you still don't support NATO this time? It's like, no, I still don't. That's right. I thought it was kind of like a pretty standard opinion to just be against NATO, regardless of what's going on, regardless of the extenuating circumstances. Shouldn't we trust the imperialists this one time? No, we shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. We've received very specific, clear directions about this. Very specific, clear instructions. Don't ever trust the imperialists, not even for a moment. No, not this one time. Not this one time. The thing in the future. Oh, Taiwan, bro. China's threatening Taiwan, bro. You got to support NATO this one time. Or not NATO. You got to support AUKUS now. They had to create a new NATO for this purpose. No, we don't. No, we don't need to support NATO. Anyway.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Kalik, and this is Dispatches. These are dangerous times. The U.S. continues to escalate its Cold War on China and Russia, bringing us closer to a potential hot war between nuclear-armed powers. Why is the U.S. willing to risk nuclear apocalypse to weaken these two countries? Our leaders say it's about protecting the international rules-based order.
The international rules-based order. And it is about that. But, again, who's in this order? What are the rules? Who has to follow the rules and who doesn't? Well, that's up for debate, isn't it? What if the imperialists say Putler is bad? This is the one time you're allowed to trust them.
about protecting democracy and human rights against an authoritarian axis of evil. But this is just a guise. It's actually about maintaining US unipolar hegemony over the world, which requires preventing, or at the very least delaying, the integration of Europe and Asia. An integration that's logical both economically and geographically. That's why Europe is the biggest loser of this new Cold War. It's European workers, European economies, and European industries that are suffering the most under the weight of US-led sanctions against Russia. A US-led decoupling from China would be even more devastating to Europeans. China is the EU's largest trading partner. Is the EU really willing to commit economic suicide for the US? Here to discuss this and more is Vijay Prashad, Executive Director of the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research and author.
NATO is socialism because it's nations working. Oh, God,
many-
I'm sorry, Rania. Sometimes I get Rania with the really bad pause faces. I apologize, Rania. NATO is socialism because it's nations working together. That's right. This is some people uncritically, unironically say these things on this platform and get taken seriously. And in fact, have large audiences and incomes that listen to what they have to say. Just really, really bad stuff. Really, really bad stuff. And then you're supposed to debate it. Like, why would you debate with someone that would go and say something so obvious, so just completely, entirely wrong? Are we going to convince someone that says the kind of thing, convince them of the error of their viewpoint? We're going to convince them of the error of their ways? No, we're not. It's a complete waste of everyone's time. Good for growing an income, good for growing an audience. Not so good for like your mental stability or actually, getting to the heart of like any of these problems.
Books.
We'll fix them with
including
facts and
Washington
logic.
Bullets, a history of the CIA, coups, and assassinations. But before we jump into it, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can help it grow by becoming a patron at patreon.com/breakthrough news or by donating below on YouTube. Vijay, it's so good to have you back on.
It's great to be with you. Thanks.
So let's just jump right into it because there's so much to talk about here. But like I mentioned in the intro, obviously I want to talk to you about the way that the issue of European and Asian integration and preventing and delaying that is really at the root of a lot of the U.S. escalations against Russia and China and this new Cold War that we're in. So in that sense, a good place to start might be, can you explain to our audience the sort of historical fact of Europe's relationship with Asia and what is meant by Eurasian integration? And we can go from there.
Okay, I mean, it's great to talk about these issues because they don't really get talked about with much seriousness. Continents are artificial creations. Europe, Asia, Africa, these are not written on the surface of the soil of the earth. I mean,
that's actually an interesting point. I saw a tweet about this the other day about Europe. And this is true. We don't talk about this very much. Europe, though, not a continent. It's not a continent. It's like a peninsula of Asia. West Asia, that's right. That's what it is. That's what Europe is. It's Asia's Florida. Thank you. It's a West Asian peninsula. You're not a continent, Europe. Oh, they just dropped a video about Brazil too. Okay, that's interesting. With who? Now I feel like I started this thing with VJ and I kind of want to continue it though. Yeah, Europe, fucking get real. You're not a continent.
somebody decided here is Europe and here's a line and Asia starts over there. Look at Turkey, for instance. Turkey's capital city, Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, is part of Europe, but the entire rest of Turkey is in Asia. Anatolia and so on, it's all in Asia. In fact, even Istanbul has a section across the Bosphorus, which is the so-called Asian side of Istanbul. Continents are not real, people. They become real as a consequence of human history. So Europe and Asia are one landmass. There's nothing that really divides this landmass. There's no ocean in between Europe and Asia. In fact, even Africa is linked, through Egypt, through the Sinai Peninsula to Asia. There's nothing that divides Asia from Africa. Um, and in fact, the divisions between Europe and Asia have been quite modern. In other words, colonialism was an early division between Asia and Europe, because after all, the Europeans came and colonized Asia and parceled it up. So there was no natural relationship, say, between China and Russia, and with Russia and the rest of Europe. The coastal regions are what linked Europe to Asia and so on. And then the Cold War, when the great Iron Curtain descended in Eastern Europe, that was Harry Truman's phrase. The Cold War also divided Eurasia. Well, after the Cold War ended, there's been a series of reasons why the divisions across Eurasia have begun to vanish. And these accelerated after the world financial crisis in 2007. Well, why is that so? Because
I'm going to email
for two
VJ about
reasons.
getting him back
Number
on the
one,
show.
the United States prosecuted with European help three really crazy wars. The war against Iraq, the war against Libya, and then the sanctions war against Iran. So Europe lost three principal sources of energy. There's, of course, Norway, which is a main source of energy, also the North Sea oil that's there in the United Kingdom, and so on. But these are not sufficient. The large sources of energy were lost. And so Europe started to purchase more Russian energy. And here, of course, Russian natural gas came right through pipelines. It was cheaper than getting it as liquefied natural gas from other countries, and so on. So it got to the point where Germany was getting 30%, one third of their energy from Russia. So one feature of the natural integration was Russian supply of energy into Europe. Secondly, after the world financial crisis, the US investments into Europe began to decline. And you began to see Chinese investments increase, which is why almost 17 countries in Eastern Europe joined the Belt and Road Initiative. An initiative comes out of China. So it's through investments that you see China and Europe begin to integrate. And then the Belt and Road Initiative, through the massive technological feat of building railroads, that go from Beijing all the way through Central Asia up to Lake Van at the border of Turkey, and then link the rest of Europe to Asia through those rail lines. That's the nature of the historical integration. It really can't be stopped, or it can only be delayed, but it really can't be stopped. It's on the march. It's taking place.
And you mentioned the financial crisis. You're talking, of course, here about the 2007-2008 financial crisis, which the U.S. was responsible for.
Okay, folks. I just emailed VJ. I was just reminded to do it by looking at this clip. I emailed VJ Prashad about coming back on the program. I just emailed it, just sent it. I'll let you know how that goes. I got to do some booking time, because I got a number of other guests that I got to book over the next couple of weeks. So I just reached out to VJ. I got some other options on the table as well. I will work on that. This is going to be a big year, okay? Over at TRRS. Year 3 is going to be the biggest year yet. Might try to grab Abby before she has the baby. Oh, I did try Outrun. I spoke with her a couple weeks ago, and she can't now because of the baby stuff. But we have been in touch a number of times, and she's really interested in coming on. It's really just a matter of getting her at the right time, because she's got so many other things going on, both in her personal life and her professional life. But Abby will be coming on. I'm going to try and get Jesse Ventura. So these are 3 tentatives for this year. VJ Prashad, Abby, Jesse Ventura, who I have a contact with that I didn't follow up on a couple weeks ago, but can now. Gerald Horn, we've been talking about Gerald Horn as well. Okay? There's going to be a lot of great stuff coming up on this program. I'm back and better than ever now. Okay, so keep tuning in and keep coming back and support the show if you can. If you can subscribe or give subs to the show, really helps keep this on the air. Big things planned. Great content coming up on TRRS. It can't happen without your support. So if you can, subscribe, use your Prime sub, gift subs, gift friend coin, tip, Patreon, what have you. Every little bit helps. It all helps a lot. Great things coming up on this program.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Dr. Horn, let's go.
Hell yeah. Thank you, Dimitri. Dimitri's really been pushing for this. And I'll think of some more people to get on. You know, I've talked about like debating stuff and how I don't do it and I don't agree with it. I do kind of want to.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, DRP, for the gifted sub. I do kind of want to see if I could get Pierre Polyev on the show. You know, not for a debate, but I want to see if he can be pressured because he's like, oh, I talk about the issues and I'm not afraid of debate and I'm not afraid of this. I do kind of want to see if we could get Pierre on the program to see if he can be like, try and bring his like kitchen table issues shtick to this program and see if he can sell us on this. What if he did a really respectful interview with Pierre but work his ass into a corner over and over? I mean, that would be kind of the idea. You know, not to be a prick, but to try and expose the grift at play with talking about these common sense economic issues and highlight the lack of solutions or the solutions which are all guaranteed to make all the problems worse. Anyway, these are all just ideas that I have. These are all ideas that I have. I would like to do some big things with this program this year, so I'm really going to start trying to move ahead with that stuff over the next couple of weeks. Tell us to invest in crypto. That's right.
U.S. banking institutions were responsible for. And there's actually a piece you wrote about this whole issue of preventing Eurasian integration that I will link to in the description. But in that piece,
he is a crypto guy, or he was.
That is a really significant.
He literally told people to invest their retirement savings in crypto immediately before the crypto market started to completely tank. That's how much we should trust this guy. As he's complaining about like the cost, he's a landlord that's complaining about the cost of housing. He's a landlord and he's like, housing prices are so expensive. I hate this. I don't think you do hate it, Pierre. I think you like it. You invest in it and you profit off of this. So you're a part of the whole reason this problem exists in the first place because housing has become commodified. That's the whole fucking problem. Anyway.
Time period in bringing about some of the integration that you just explained. But can you elaborate a bit on that? What was the significance of the financial crisis and the source of it?
Well, certainly the financial crisis was merely a normal crisis of capitalism. That's the nature of that crisis. It was also a consequence of banks being unregulated and over leveraging themselves. In other words, banks started to make very risky loans in the case of the United States to homeowners who had not seen their living wages rise. I mean, United States wages have been stagnant for decades. To make up for stagnant wages, people wanting to develop, a basic lifestyle, having a house and a place to live, send their children to college, have had to borrow enormously. I mean, college debt is over $1 trillion in the United States. All of this is a consequence of the kind of harshness of US capitalism, where people, in order to just make a living, have to go into debt. And banks, unregulated, were lending a lot of money to people, and debt rates went up. This is a recipe for disaster. It simply meant that if you're going to over leverage so much, people are at some point not going to be able to pay back their debts, and the music stops. And that, to a great extent, was the cascading origin of the financial crisis. Well, this made a lot of heads scratch, particularly in Beijing, where the Chinese were rethinking their major holdings of US Treasury bonds. Chinese were at one point holding over $1 trillion of US Treasuries, securities. They began to rethink their reliance on the US economy as the buyer of last resort, as the stabilizer of the world financial system, and so on. And it's as a consequence of that realization in Beijing that the Chinese began a new strategy. Firstly, to really build up the internal market in China so that the US would not any longer be their buyer of last resort. Part of this, of course, was eradicating absolute poverty, but also developing Western China and so on, including
Hey,
Xinjiang
Lana, what's up?
and Tibet, which had been neglected in the early decades of the Chinese Revolution. All of that was in a way to create an internal market. And then the Chinese pursued a policy called Belt and Road, and that's where Europe comes in. Because the Chinese began to understand that, again, this over reliance on the United States and US financial institutions was going to be dangerous. At the same
And as you
time,
all know, folks, getting Canada to join the Belt and Road Initiative is one of my major political issues that I'm going to be working on over the next couple of years.
Russia had come to the understanding that, from the fall of the Soviet Union until the world financial crisis, Russia had effectively become a satellite of the United States.
China, build a high-speed rail between Quebec City and Windsor, Ontario. Please. Please. President Xi, please. My people need infrastructure. We need infrastructure.
It was welcomed.
Our country is dying.
G8, Boris Yeltsin, who ruled in Russia from 1991 to 1999, was effectively a puppet of the United States. Vladimir Putin was the handpicked select.
Daniel Smith is going to build a hyperloop between Edmonton and Calgary. We're so fucked.
2007 was pretty pliant, to U.S. Understanding of the role.
I'm sorry, but just imagine again if we had started building these big transport projects that we were talking about, like if we had started that rail line between Windsor and Quebec City, when China started building their high-speed rail system, it would be finished now or close to it. We need hospitals and doctors as well. Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? It's 2023. We still haven't started this shit. This shit. Not only have we not started, no one in our political system is talking about it. No one is campaigning on it. No one's advocating for it in the media. We're not even close. We're not even starting these things. We're not even close to starting these projects that we need to do. And we're not going to. No, we're not. No, we're not. Why not, though? Why aren't we doing this? Like, someone needs to just run on just that. We haven't started anything, and we have no intention of doing so. Except Doug Ford, like while he's in the middle of like privatizing the healthcare system in Ontario, is selling off all that greenbelt real estate to his like corrupt buddies, so they can build more highways there, or whatever, more lanes, more highways, more strip malls. That's what we're doing. That's our infrastructure, and we got to give $10 billion more to Ukraine and Juan Guaido. That's right. Jesus Christ, what a disaster! President Xi, was anyone watching this? Please. I'm still going to keep advocating for this. Okay? Why build anything if it isn't profitable? Yeah, don't you know with that Chinese high-speed rail system, it's financed by these Chinese billionaires and it's operating at a huge loss. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine how terrible that must be? When you get private interests to fund these public infrastructure projects at their expense, what a terrible situation that is for them. Oh my God, it's so terrifying to even imagine. You mean it's privately subsidized and publicly profitable? What? Oh my goodness. Anyway, I'm going to continue advocating to bring this to Canada. You know? Canada should join Quebec anyways, but Canada in general should join the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's all just desert. We should just be deserting the sinking ship of the United States of America. Where we've tied ourselves to this sinking ship and is going to drag us all the way to the bottom. Unless we get with the fucking program and see which way the winds are blowing. You don't have anyone in Canadian media making these arguments.
Size of the account.
I'm sorry, Dimitri, you're getting screwed over by the text-to-speech. I sent a bee to sting old Doug and to cause an allergic reaction, but the ass just swallowed the whole thing. Continued on. That was amazing, though. You do have to hand it to him. That was very funny. Anyway, it's the thing that I complain about when we hear all the time about free press, and that's our beautiful thing about Western liberal democracy. We have this free press. Yet no one in our press is ever saying this. There's no space in our marketplace of ideas for anyone imagining this. It's really just like, how critical of China should we be? Should we be threatening war with them, or should we be criticizing them but begrudgingly doing some business with them? That's the range of opinions that we have in our media. This crazy idea, maybe we should be working with this new global superpower of 1.3 billion people, who's surpassing the USA in the size of its economy, who's surpassing the USA and surpassing the West as a global trading partner with the rest of the world, the leader of development in the rest of the world. Maybe we should be working with this country rather than deliberately antagonizing them constantly and working with the dying empire of the United States of America. What a crazy opinion. Oh my God, you can never say that. It's just so outrageous. You could never suggest something so wild in our media, in our mainstream media, in our land of free speech and free expression. You could never, no newspaper in the fucking country or no news agency is ever going to advocate for anything remotely like that. How many Nazi monuments should we build? 10? Yeah. What's the number? But they censor the internet. Have you seen the internet lately? Folks, have you seen the fucking internet lately? You're telling me that censoring the internet would not be a great thing? Look what it's doing to our society and our culture. Have you checked in with your parents lately? Have you checked into this shit that your parents are looking at on Facebook and YouTube lately? It's not good. Your gams. Have you checked in with Gam lately? Do you know the kind of fucking crazy shit that she's looking at on Facebook? We've lost an entire generation of gams over here, and we're debating whether it would be a good idea to maybe think about censoring the internet. Come on now. Come on, folks. My poli-sci book's first chapter this semester is about watching China for more authoritative tendencies, or whether we should bomb or invade the DPRK. First assignment is how to take the DPRK down. I hope you're going to crush that one, Dimitri. I had to save my mom from an internet scam yesterday. But Rob, I want to die from eating pink slime I bought from an internet shaman. Jesus, folks. So glad my grandparents are scared of the internet. Yeah, that's good to know. My grandparents as well died before the internet was I remember sending emails with my granny, but I don't think she was on Facebook. Yeah, I would really like to see Dimitri's homework on this. Absolutely. Anyway, it's amazing though, yeah. Oh, they censor the internet. Oh my God. You mean they do important and good things to try and protect the health of their society? Wow, that's shocking. Really scary stuff.
Europe, the role of Russia, and so on. In 2007, Putin goes to the Munich Security Conference and he says the world will have no single master. That's the first public declaration by Putin of a kind of break with the United States. And why this is important is then Russia and China both.
This seems really interesting, but I want to get to this too. Boomers should only be allowed to use Neopets, no more Facebook. I mean, I maintain that what we should do, if I was in charge, this is what I would do. I'm not expecting this to happen, but I think we should create a special Facebook, a fake Facebook, and put all the boomers on that. Okay, and it just is basically like the Matrix, but it's not like a reality that they have. They're not like in a pod or anything like that, or getting anything injected into their brain. They just have their normal lives, and they check their Facebook, and it's just you curate a little reality. So they hear about good things that are happening, and they get to press little buttons, and they get the likes and the feedback. They put pictures on there, and they get a bunch of people liking it and saying, "Oh, it's nice to see you. You look great. Your family looks great." And all the news things that they care about can say like, "Oh yeah, all the bad people are locked up now." All the bad people are locked up. We got all the pedos.
You can count on me.
All the Democrats, Satanists, they're all locked up. You don't need to worry about it anymore.
Maggie Simpson driving the car.
Thank you, Old Dutch. Thank you, Old Dutch, for the 22 months of tier 2. I appreciate that, Old Dutch. You know what I mean? And they can just go on there every day and do little games or whatever. And they can just stop bothering people. And they're like, hey, you don't need to vote anymore. You actually vote right here on this platform. And here, do you want this guy or this guy? And oh, look, it's this guy. And then you get clips of the president being handsome and stuff and not really doing anything. It's the guy that you like. Everything's going good, It's like the game controller that's not plugged in. That's right. Yeah. That's right. A fake internet daycare for old people with lead poisoning. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting here. Friends and family fun share. There we go. My mom has Nextdoor. Now she's constantly afraid she's going to get robbed. Nextdoor is like free-based local news. It's just insane, the stuff that you see on that. I saw someone on a bike in my neighborhood. Can we call the cops? I saw a strange person biking. If someone bikes close to your property, can you shoot them? Here's an idea. How about an MMORPG based on QAnon lore that would divert their weirdo energy into something that isn't dangerous? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at, You just give them a fun little thing that they can put into, and meanwhile, they can put time into, and meanwhile we can get to work on like fixing all the problems and stuff. The only robbed our parents should be getting is a subscription to this stream. Thank you, Metal Dipshit. Thank you. On ours, people are chasing down package pirates in their car. God. We just live in a dying civilization, don't we? We really do. Just give them something fun to do. That's what I mean. It occupies their time.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Marty, for gifting a sub to my mother. We need to deal with TikTok too. Well, we need to fucking have actually like take the internet seriously. And yeah, we do the whole Chinese firewall thing. This is actually a good thing we should be pursuing. We don't want the current crop of tech bros or liberals or conservatives that are there now to have this power. But if we were going to take over, we're going to need to do that though afterwards. Yeah, the stuff on TikTok is wild too. Did you see that TikTok the other day that was like talking about how people have like connections with past figures and stuff? Lana, again, it's all the obsession with like psychic bullshit and all that kind of mysticism that Lana correctly pointed out as a precursor to fascism, or like an example of like the civilization undergoing these death throes. TikTok is so much like that. Oh yeah, I was just communicating with this ancient Roman scholar earlier, and people just say this like, oh yeah, that's just something that I was doing. And they've got huge audiences that are just like, oh, cool. Thank you. I'm glad you explaining this to us. Thank you. Just people acting like it's totally fine. Oh my God. The woman who randomly dropped
the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Week 7. You are the president of Taiwan. How would you use your country's IR, international relations, to fend off Chinese hegemony? This is an actual assignment.
Dimitri, thank you so much. That's amazing because it's supposed to be like, isn't that shit supposed to be kind of like nonpartisan? Like that's a poli-sci class that's advocating a very specific like political viewpoint when it comes to international relations. I thought all this shit was supposed to like, aren't these conservatives complain all the time that this shit is all like left-wing socialist pinko stuff? And it's literally just like advertising this like State Department approved viewpoint of international relations. Yes, the teacher Kissinger. But yeah, the TikTok stuff is so weird. Does anyone have that tweet? Actually, I would like to take a brief sidebar to just look at that tweet. Oh, that sounds like a great suggestion, Old Dutch. Let's put that on the list, definitely. Redhika Desai. Our hard left Marxist institutes of higher learning. That's right. Jesus. It's so bad. I have no idea how to find that TikTok, but we if someone finds it, we'll take a look at it. But yes, the point is though, yeah, we do need to censor the internet. Showing China censoring the internet and saying that's a bad thing is like it's completely preposterous. Take a look at what's going out there on the internet. What are your former friends from high school looking at on Facebook and TikTok? What is your gam and your parents looking at? None of it is good. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, the trad accounts in the new age medicine circles, it's crazy. Like I really remember like when all the anti-vax stuff starting, like in like the California like yoga moms sort of communities, and thinking about how weird and obscure it was. And I don't think I was ever prepared for the extent to which that was only the beginning, and it was really going to grow and escalate into what feels like almost like a majority or all close to it. If it's not a majority of people that are into that kind of world, it's like getting up there. It's a sizable number of people. And it's not just California yoga moms anymore. It's fucking everywhere. We need a plan for the yoga crystal superfood crunchy trad bombs. Yes, we do. We need to censor the internet and we need re-education. These all need to be part of our agenda. God. That'll dipshit. Listen. You motherfucker. Oh, it's because this is the evil thing about this is that I like and trust Metal Dipshit, and Metal Dipshit posts a link and says it's the thing that we're talking about. I'm like, of course, Metal Dipshit, a valued member of this community, is not going to, in the year 2023, is not going to rickroll me. Surely Metal Dipshit, a known member of this community, a regular, someone that often contributes things that we enjoy, surely Metal Dipshit is not going to fucking rickroll me in the year of our Lord 2023. That's outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. I remember when the NHL started having an outbreak of the measles a few years ago that started with the California teams. That seriously, I mean, this stuff is, and you see it in athletes a lot. You saw with the COVID and the vaccine stuff, Kyrie Irving and all that shit. I mean, Jesus. It is a great song though, that Rick Astley song. It's became kind of a joke, a meme. To me, a great pop song is no joke, though, and it's very good. So we should continue watching this clip, even though now that we're going down that TikTok rabbit hole, I almost kind of want to pivot to that. But let's keep watching this clip of VJ and Rania, because this is it's been really good so far, and is providing a number of interesting discussion topics. But yes, we need to censor the internet. Yes, we're going to need to re-educate your gam. If that makes you uncomfortable, well, you've got to get over it. Harden your heart. If you're a socialist, if you're on the left and you actually believe in like building political power at some point, we're going to need to take these things seriously. Harden your heart. Okay? When we re-educate your gam, it's going to be for her own benefit. So you got to get with the program. No apologies.
Slowly beginning to feel the pressure from Washington, begin to interact a great deal. And the integration of Russia and China is, in a sense, the seed of the eventual integration of Eurasia. Russia and China have been in a border dispute from the 1950s right up to just a few years ago. As a consequence of this new relationship between Russia and China, they settled their border dispute. And they
you see the belligerence of U.S. foreign policy has pushed their greatest enemies, who they had separated and split up. Their belligerence has pushed their two greatest enemies back together again. Congratulations to the imperialists for that one. You had won. You fucking had it. You had it all. You had it all won. And you just couldn't take yes for an answer, could you? You had to keep punishing. You had to keep twisting the knife, didn't you? And then you've brought about the exact circumstances of your own downfall. Hubris.
Russia began to sell a lot of energy to China. China began to feel vulnerable with the sea lanes, with the United States conducting freedom of navigation exercises, not only in the sea, in the South China Sea, but also in the Straits of Malacca, in the area around Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So China began to buy more energy from Russia. China began to make great investments in Russia and so on. So those economies and those political forces began to align. And I think that, is a consequence of what happened in the world financial crisis. It sets in motion, this process of integration, which I think should not be taken lightly.
Right. And of course, you also talked about the fact that following that financial crisis, that was when Russian energy sales, not just to China, but you mentioned Europe, grew, right? And then several European countries ended up joining the Belt and Road Initiative, which increased investments between Europe and China. And then I'm actually quoting you here. You say earlier forms of globalization in Eurasia were limited by colonialism and the Cold War. This marked the first time in 200 years that integration began to take place on an equitable foundation across the region. And the reason I wanted to quote that is because, it seems to me that the European, I guess, Atlanticists, right, the sort of European leaders and thinkers who are on board with like America first, are the most upset about their current relationship with China and Russia. I mean, let's say the relationship before the war in Ukraine. Because it isn't one of domination like in the past. It is on equal footing. I'm just curious if you can speak to that, because that does seem to be like one of the issues that certain people in the garden have with the relationship. If we're going to have a relationship with these countries, it needs to be one of domination and subjugation.
Relatedly, we really have to do with wacko religious and political cults. No more Falun Gong, no more Scientology, no more Quiverful. We have to get Soviet about that shit. I'm not even kidding. We need to go full Hoja. You need to go full Hoja on their asses. No more evangelicals, no more tax breaks for churches. Yeah. And again, that shouldn't be controversial. And again, and not to make everything about this, but like when you see other countries engaging in that, when you see other countries being like, oh, we have a religious extremism problem in our country. It's leading to terrorist attacks and all kinds of chaos and violence and insurrectionary sentiment and all these kinds of harmful social consequences. So we're going to take people that we think are at risk and pull them into this system and educate them and give them job training and vocational training and try to make them productive members of society. We're just not going to sit back and allow that shit to happen. And then we say, "Boy, that's so authoritarian." No. You know? We can't. The other alternative is that you can just sit around and complain about these people having this unchecked political power in your society and just continue to live with all the consequences of it. And you can complain and complain and complain while nothing actually happens and the problem gets worse. Or we can learn from what other countries have done in similar situations to deal with that level of like pervasive extremism and religious fanaticism. Yeah, they took over the Supreme Court, but you also still have to treat those institutions as legitimate, right? You have to continue treating these institutions as legitimate, even when we acknowledge that they've been captured by these extremist interests. Anyway.
Well,
I'm not doing too good at getting to this video.
That's a reference to the European Union's foreign policy man who made a speech saying Europe is a garden and the rest of the world is a jungle. Well played. So it's actually interesting. There's two things to be said here. Number one, it's very true that as far as the United States is concerned, this Atlantic alliance requires the subordination of Europe to North American aims. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, plays a big role in this, in the military flank. And then various trade agreements between the United States and Europe was to do a kind of economic yoking. Unfortunately for...
I mean, Lana, that's what I've been saying lately, right? The left is so wussy. The left is so wussy about meaningfully enforcing their agenda, which is going to involve getting people on board who don't necessarily agree with you, are so squishy about the idea of actually like enacting an agenda. Ooh, we don't want people to call us authoritarian. Well, okay, well then just sit around on the internet and complain all the time, because guess what? This shit is never happening if you don't start getting tough. We got to get tough.
For Washington, the trade agreements have not really gone forward. They haven't been able to expand. And part of this is because of a lack of confidence that the United States can actually put money on the table. The US government, I mean, I know that the military budget this year is supposed to be $858 billion. But if you really look at it, it's closer to $1.5 trillion. You add in the nuclear stuff and so on. It's a lot of money. This massive waste on military expenditure means that the US government simply doesn't have the cash in hand to put money on the table for any kind of major trade and investment deal with the Europeans. So the Atlanticists, who previously had relied on both military security pacts, NATO, and on trade and
for sure, bigger wig,
to yoke Europe to North America, now found that they could only rely on NATO. NATO became the principal instrument. Well, NATO doesn't feed you.
A lot of having ready to roll out every afternoon.
Good old
it's
Rob
true.
To talk you through all this.
Oh snap!
Ready to volunteer my service as a guard at the Lulag.
Oh snap! It's Benny. Benny, thank you so much for the 22 months tier 1. The Lulag. She would be the best goddamn guard at any of these at the Lulag. I have no doubt. Thank you, Benny.
And many European countries.
Oh no, Lula's purging these Brazilian security forces of like the reactionary Bolsonaro supporters and insurrectionists. Oh no, that's so authoritarian. Ooh. Jesus.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I heard a hammer and sickle give you plus 100 toughness, but a TRRS badge give you plus 1000 toughness.
Thank you, Godzone Drunk. 12 months of Prime. Brand spanking new 1 year sub badge for Godzone Drunk. Thank you, Godzone Drunk. 12 months of Bezos bucks. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
A rational, realistic.
It would be more tolerant to just let them do the coup. I know.
Chinese investments, Chinese technological developments, and also the
Yeah, Rogue Dyke 69. I've been making that case lately. I mean, this is what we've been talking about a lot. It should be a teaching moment for libs that are shrill about J6. Like, hey, you can actually use state power. It just takes a left-wing government to exercise it correctly. That's what I mean. It's like I've been complaining about it lately. I don't know if you've been around, but the simultaneously treating January 6th like it's the worst thing that's ever happened in American history, and then just being like, oh yeah, all these Congress people that were involved in this, well, they're of course they're still in Congress. We complain about it like it's the worst thing that's ever fucking happened, but these people have even more power in Congress than they had before. You got Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court. His wife was all implicated in all this insurrectionary nonsense. Why don't you do something about that then? If you're going to tell us that it's the worst thing, the most treasonous thing that's ever happened in the United States, actually do something about that then. But they don't. Because it's all just about it's like if it proves that the orange man is bad, that's all we really care about. And they really just care about consequences for the orange man. And guess what? There's not going to be consequences for him either.
Good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Hi VJ, hi Rania, hi Rob.
There's not going to be consequences for Trump either, folks. There's not. That's what I don't get about these people. They talk about January 6th like it's the worst thing that's ever happened. They don't actually act like that, though. They just want to have their hearings. They want to have their viral tweets. They want to have their impassioned Sorkin-esque diatribes on MSNBC or whatever other corporate media establishment. But all the same people that were involved, though, yeah, still give them power. They should still have power in the U.S. government. No, we shouldn't go into the Capitol Police or DHS or any of these other institutions and purge them of these like hardcore reactionaries that are infesting all these security state agencies. Of course, no, that would be too authoritarian. It'd be too uncouth to do any of that stuff. Dakadoon, thank you for the 20 months of tier 1 and for all the support. Thanks, Dakadoon. It's so annoying, this kind of stuff. It's very annoying.
The availability of high-skilled labor in China. Wuhan, where the COVID-19 virus was first, found in Hubei province. Wuhan is a center of a lot of German manufacturing firms, a number of car companies, high-tech firms, and so on.
Authoritarian is when Nazis face the consequences of their own actions.
They went there because there's high-skilled labor. That's the reason they are there. That's part of the integration. It's not just Chinese investment in Europe. It's also a lot of manufacturing from Europe is done in China, and they are deeply integrated through that process. So that's the first thing. It really bothered the Atlanticists, who you mentioned, that there was this integration. In other words, Europe was slipping its neck from the yoke that the United States had placed on it. I think that itself was an important indicator. But the other thing is, it's not like Europe has a problem with this integration, frankly. The European Union released a report a few years ago, which I found very interesting. And here your garden and jungle reference is useful. Because what the European Union said in this report
Nice,
was
Dakadoon.
they welcome integration with
Listening audio only from the new job. Good to hear that. Why am I whispering? It's like you're on the new job. I don't want you to get in trouble. Thank you, Dakadoon.
Asia, but on European terms.
Thanks for tuning
What
in.
they don't like about the BRI is they claim that it's on Chinese terms. Now, that's disputable. The Chinese are walking around saying, look, it's a win-win situation. They're not saying it's a win-lose situation. They're being very, straightforward. It's win-win. Now, you can contest that, say, look, it's not actually win-win or whatever. But the point is, what the European Union was saying is, we don't mind this integration with China, but we want to dictate the...
And sorry, I don't want to... There's a lot to read, but really interesting kind of points being made from Lana and Biggerwig and others in the chat right now about how we do need to get tough on religion and how, like, this idea of being against religion has become sort of like cringe or whatever to do. And what meanwhile, we're just ignoring the still incredibly pernicious influence that it can have on our society and our democracy, or what remains of it. And like Biggerwig said, I think this is a good point. A lot of the rise of the cringy new atheism was a reaction to hyper-evangelicalism during the Bush years. And it's not like that stuff stopped being bad. Yeah. And it is very cringy. The cringy Reddit new atheism stuff is annoying. Richard Dawkins is annoying. That doesn't mean that this like completely institutionalized evangelicalism is like a good thing that we should just ignore. There is a dialectic to it. What do you know? Yeah. What do you know?
Terms of it. So on the one side, you have the Atlanticists saying no integration of Europe with Asia that will break the Atlantic Alliance. You can integrate, but you must maintain the Atlantic Alliance as primary. That's one approach. Second approach is sections in the European Union saying, yes, we want to integrate with China,
More like Richard
but on our
Dawkins.
terms, not theirs. And that actually is
Forcing
really where
creationism
the
in schools,
rubber hits
indeed
the road
bad.
for the
Yes.
Europeans, because they are stuck now. You know, they are, this integration process has been suspended in a great part by the war in Ukraine and by the hybrid war.
By the way, also like amazing how like a number of those like prominent new atheist types now almost like support that kind of those trad values that they used to pretend to be against because it's like to own the trans people and stuff. Now you have people that claim to be these new atheist types that are now clinging to these traditional values, and they're just using their new atheism to criticize what they consider to be some kind of like deviant behavior that they personally disapprove of, or to be Islamophobic. Yeah, they're secular evangelicals. That's a good point. Yeah, because they'll be Islamophobic, they'll be homophobic, transphobic, but still cling to this kind of atheist branding. How do we recreate the stability society had in the 50s? Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, it's the South Park ideology. As long as you take it seriously, then it must be bad.
Or the new Cold War against China.
And that's actually a perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the way the ways that the U.S. is trying to prevent or obstruct, or I guess the way you put it, delay the inevitable, which is this integration. And I think, of course.
And here's the question that this came up in the chat yesterday, but that's the question is like, we all know that the integration, the Eurasian integration that they're talking about, this seismic shift in global geopolitical power that's happening right now. We all know that it is a inevitability. The only question is whether the U.S. will nuke the world first before it happens, or whether they won't. And I'm up in the air about whether that's going to happen. I'm actually not too confident that they're not going to just end up nuking the world rather than allowing this shift in global power to take place. Certainly would not put it past them. That's the question, though, isn't it?
Is the most obvious way at the moment. When people think of NATO, they of course think of Russia because that's its reason for existing, right? To be this like anti-Russia military alliance. But one way that it's become clear that the new Cold War is more, is about preventing this integration is the way that the U.S. has tried to reconfigure NATO into also an anti-China alliance. And you write in your piece that documents produced by NATO since about 2021 have become increasingly hostile towards China, specifically with these accusations that, China is challenging Western interests and security and values and the so-called rules-based international order, or whatever that means. And that's, specifically that was a direct quote from NATO's 2022 strategic concept. You also mentioned that Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea, which of course are non-NATO countries, attended the NATO summit for the first time, where they addressed military cooperation against China.
Sorry, I'm just remembering when fucking metal dipshit Rick rolled me. I'm still in shock. I just saw the clip that G-Clip in the Discord posted the clip now. And I'm contemplating being Rickrolled in the year 2023 for a live audience. And it's really just something else. Jesus.
Can you talk about this reconfiguration of NATO into an anti-China alliance and why that's actually so significant for Europe?
Well,
Jesus.
NATO was established after World War II, principally, as you say, an instrument for US power in Europe to do two things. Number one,
hello, vexing
was
thoughts.
on the surface to provide security for Europe, principally against the USSR and the Eastern European communist states. So that was the surface motivation. But underneath that was another motivation, which was to basically combat what was known as Gaullism. In other words, Charles de Gaulle, who was one of the leaders of the Free French against the Nazis and becomes the president of France, Charles de Gaulle had a unique perspective regarding Europe. You know, he had a kind of arrogant European attitude that why should we be the poodles of the United States? We're going to have an independent French foreign policy or a European foreign policy, and that's known as Gaullism. So there was a NATO also provided a challenge against Gaullism, saying that no, Europe doesn't need its own foreign policy or its own military security. The United States will take care of that. You know, so NATO played
Cool.
that role historically of both being a kind of shield against the Soviet Union on the one side publicly, but really it was to combat Gaullism within Europe. In other words, to combat any idea in Europe that Europe can have its independence, you know, both in terms of foreign policy, but also strategic policy. In fact, that remains a problem. The European Union till today struggles with the idea whether there should be a European army or whether indeed there should be an independent European foreign policy. There really isn't an independent European foreign policy document. You know, there is a commissioner of foreign relations, but they don't really develop strategic concepts for Europe, you know, that are actually authentic to Europe. They all seem to be photocopied from things that come from Washington, D.C.
Right.
So that's the origin of NATO. Now, NATO, after the fall of the USSR, found that its raison d'etre, its reason for existence, vanished. You know, if the public reason was protect Europe from the USSR, well, the USSR is gone. In fact, Russia joins the G8. Russia, in fact, becomes a partner of NATO in the Yeltsin years. It becomes a partner state of NATO. So why do you need NATO if your principal adversary is
And like I was saying before, too, Russia could have been part of NATO. Russia wanted to join NATO at one point, and all they had to do was accept Russia into their precious little club after they had destroyed them, after they had humiliated them. All you had to do is accept Russia into your precious little club, and you have the global hegemony that you so desire. But they just couldn't help but be belligerent. They couldn't help it. They just hate Russia too much. They couldn't bring them on board into their special little group, their special little lunch table, their geopolitical lunch table. And they just had to keep antagonizing, keep poking and prodding, keep expanding NATO right up to their borders, keep sanctioning, and eventually Russia's like, all right, okay, we can't be part of your club. Fine. Well, we're going to ensure that there's not going to be this like unipolar world order anymore. And again, you don't have to like their methods at all. You don't have to, but you do have to acknowledge that the U.S. literally spent 20 years poking and prodding them until they got to that point. Arguably, Syria was the first sort of sign. There were speeches given. VJ referenced it earlier about the. I think this was in like 2007, Putin's speech in 2007, which signaled their kind of shift in this. Shifting geopolitical stance. But Syria was probably the first example on a foreign policy level where they said like, okay, no, we're just not gonna let you overthrow the Syrian government. We're gonna meaningfully like push back on that. But that's what I mean. You don't have to like their methods, you don't have to, but you do have to acknowledge the role that NATO, the United States, Canada, and the NATO countries played in pushing them into a corner for decades until they acted, and all they had to do was just let them into their little club, and they just couldn't do it. I find that kind of interesting, that kind of tragic irony about this whole situation.
has disappeared? Why not disband NATO? People started talking like that. Well, they said, no, you need NATO. It provides security. Because the underlying reason for NATO, which is to prevent a independent European foreign policy to develop and so on, was very strong and had to be maintained. So new uses were made of NATO. Initially, of course,
The goal was never to integrate Russia. It's about balkanizing and weakening a big resource-rich country that could become an economic competitor. There we go.
NATO was used in the dismemberment of Yugoslavia in 1999, plays a big role in that. And then shortly thereafter becomes a party to the US war in Afghanistan. And once the NATO forces go to Afghanistan, a so-called out-of-area action, a discussion opens up in the journals of US foreign policy analysts. People like Ivo Daalder and others start writing in Foreign Affairs, the Council of Foreign Relations magazine, and so on. They start writing about the need for what they call global NATO. Very interesting phrase, starts getting bandied about in the 2000s. At NATO meetings themselves, you begin to see discussions about the globalization of NATO partners in Africa, NATO partners in South America, NATO partners in Asia, and so on. So now we've come to global NATO and then NATO's partner countries outside. Well, that's interesting because that is, in a way, the way in which NATO has been globalized. You can bring Colombia in as a partner. You can have South Korea as a partner and so on. And so you start globalizing NATO. That becomes quite an effective means for NATO to establish itself as a global security force. NATO then enters another out-of-area operation in Libya in 2011. And after Libya, it was now clear NATO is a global force. It's allowed to operate anywhere.
And that's what I was just saying. Again, whether you like it or not, that's what Russia said when the proxy war in Syria was starting, the Syrian civil war, whatever you want to call it, which as we all know, was pursued and for the exact same ways, was pushed and promoted by the very same security state forces that did what they did to Libya. And Russia said, no, we're not going to let you do what you did in Libya to Syria. We all saw on a global level what happened to Libya when this exact strategy played out. We're not going to allow you to do that. And Syria is such a hot button issue and so controversial, and you can never say anything positive about the Syrian government or talk about Putin's role in this way. But that's what they wanted. That's the alternative. Libya was the model. That's what they wanted. Would that have been a good model for average folks in Syria? Has it worked out very well for Libyans? Of course it has not. And that's not whitewashing anything anyone on the other side has done, but that's what they wanted, to bring the Libya model to Syria, and it was Libya is still a human rights disaster to this day. And whatever standard of living that had been achieved under Gaddafi was completely wiped out and destroyed, and still has not recovered. Remember this. Now I've got to check the links.
Governor Romney recognized that Al-Qaeda is a threat.
I do remember. Is this when Romney said that Russia was the greatest threat and everyone laughed at him? And all these liberals then immediately pivoted to Russia just a few years later?
You recognize that Al-Qaeda is a threat. Because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda. You said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because
snap.
The war's been over for 20 years. But Governor, when it comes
snap, this has aged very well for the O'Bungler once again.
The foreign policies of the 1980s, just like the social policies of the 1950s and the economic policies of the 1920s. You say that you're not interested in duplicating what happened in Iraq, but just a few weeks ago you said you think we should have more troops in Iraq right now. And the challenge we have, I know you haven't been
Barfsack O'Crumbo
actually execute foreign policy, but every time you've offered an opinion, you've been wrong. You said we should have gone into Iraq, despite the fact that there were no weapons of mass destruction. You said that we should still have.
So did Joe Biden.
To this day.
So did Joe Biden. Was a very big, enthusiastic supporter of the Iraqi invasion.
Passing nuclear.
Were we supporting al-Nusra while he was saying this? I believe so. Yes.
Senators.
They're literally funding Al-Qaeda at that exact time. God damn.
Democrats and Republicans voted for it. You've said that first we should not have a timeline in Afghanistan. Then you said we should. Now you say maybe, or it depends.
Barfsack O'Crumbo.
Afghanistan, you could still make an argument for NATO's operation because the not Afghan people.
I'm gonna pause again. Remember thinking that Theo Bungler was going to put W and Cheney in jail over Iraq? Jesus, what a dupe I was. That's why I think HTA, right? It's like when you get to be a little bit older, that's why you're not fooled, right? You see all these people being like, Trump's orange man's going to go to jail, and all pretending this idea that there's going to be some, and it's like, no, they will not. The Democrats are going to take over from the mean reactionary conservatives and they're going to do good things. No, they won't. No, they don't want. No, they won't. And no, they don't want to. No, they will not. No one's going to be getting locked up. None of these things are going to happen. You don't need to get pulled into this again, right? You don't need to get pulled into, maybe this time it's going to happen. Once you've seen the cycle play out 3 or 4 times, like throughout the course of your life, you learn the basic lesson. No, the orange man will not be going to jail.
People, but Al-Qaeda had attacked the United States. Well, United States triggered the NATO charter, come to the defense of a member of NATO, United States member of NATO, so NATO operates in Afghanistan. But Libya, there was no cause for NATO to enter the Libya conflict because, UN Resolution 1973 merely said that all member states that should help, fulfill the obligations or the obligations of UN Resolution 1973. But NATO is not a member state of the UN. NATO is a independent body which is comprised of UN member states. So it was bizarre to see NATO operate in Libya. There's a kind of illegality which has not been sufficiently discussed. But it was the Libya war that, in a sense, gave NATO permission, quote unquote, permission to then actually globalize. And you begin to see talk of like an Asian NATO when the United States with Japan, Australia, and India sets up the Quadrilateral Security Initiative. That was seen as a kind of Asian NATO. There's talk of an African NATO and so on. This is all very disturbing. At the Madrid NATO summit this year, these things were on the table, and they are now using both the war in Ukraine and the pressure on China, the kind of pressure campaign in the.
That sounds good, effusive stoic. That sounds good. I will watch that. Was I breathing into the mic? Thank you for pointing that out, Tricker. I apologize. That's actually a feature. People love this kind of ASMR content, especially the audio-only friends.
The South China Sea, to establish these two arenas as areas for NATO's concern and action. In other words, all of this, Libya and then Ukraine and then the South China Sea, will become opportunities for NATO to de facto establish themselves as a global force. That's very dangerous because once you establish yourself de facto as a global force, you don't really need de jure confirmation. You don't need legal confirmation for what has become a fact, And that's what I fear, is that there's this kind of slowly sleepwalking into allowing NATO to become a global policeman. And that has to be really considered by people.
Indeed. And of course, what this means in terms of how it would affect the Europeans. I mean, China has in the last, with NATO being reconfigured as like an anti-China force, China has in the last 20 years surpassed the US to become the EU's largest trading partner, right? And for the last 6 years, it's been Germany's biggest trading partner. And of course, Germany's like the center of the EU. So that raises the question of, why would the EU commit economic suicide for the US, which it's basically already starting to do over Russia?
And the answer, obviously, is imperialism, right?
Russia and Ukraine.
Why would they commit economic suicide? Because they have no choice. Because they are under the boot of US imperialism. That's why America is an imperialist power and the world's foremost imperialist power. Because they have that kind of influence.
would the EU commit economic suicide for the US, which it's basically already starting to do over Russia and Ukraine? I mean, with its Ukraine policy, which, like you said, that policy
Forgot their US colony. That's right.
Literally just like commands from Washington. But why do European leaders do whatever the US wants, even when it's against their own interests? What explains that?
Well, they don't always. I mean, I should say that the residue of Gaullism, remember, I mentioned this tradition in Europe, of particularly in France, of an independent foreign policy and so on. This residue of Gaullism exists, it remains. Emmanuel Macron, all his problems set aside, and he did look rather lonely sitting and watching France play Morocco at the World
I
Cup.
saw that, yeah.
Yeah, but setting all that aside, Emmanuel Macron, on the question of Russia and Ukraine, has actually tried to provide an independent direction. In fact, it was Macron and Angela Merkel who put together the platform called the Normandy Four, where the United States, France, Germany, and Russia were talking about the Ukraine issue. In fact, Minsk II and so on was very much at the center of the Normandy Four discussion. So Macron, right till the very last minute in February, was trying to negotiate with the Russians, despite U.S. antipathy to those negotiations. And even now, there are strong currents inside Europe of saying we need to separate ourselves from the U.S. Strategic plan, including again by Macron. And I know that Macron came and sort of bent his knee to Biden in Washington D.C. this December. I know that. That's also true. Both these things can be true at the same time. In other words, at one respect, European leaders are basically, surrendering to the United States. Whatever you want, master. If you want us to arm the Ukrainians to prolong that war, despite the fact that it's exacerbating a cost of living crisis, despite the fact that there are protests on the streets, people desperate. I mean, the United Kingdom is having effectively an advent calendar worth of strikes. Every day there's a strike. Open one door,
France as well
nurses,
is
open the next door. It's
crazy what's going on right
workers
now
and
in
so
France.
on. So at one respect,
We don't even hear about it very much,
the
do we?
European leaders, they are
All these
basically
strikes and
surrendering to the
protests
US
going on right
despite
now.
the
Strangely
ferment inside
silent
their
in
own
Western media
countries.
about this.
On the other side, you see that they are also frustrated. Look at Germany, which has really collapsed politically. The German Green Party, at one point a great champion of environmentalism, now
It's just, it's incredible when there's a single protest in Cuba or China, it makes mainstream media and becomes this big multi-week long affair to talk about protests or strikes in these places. But yeah, when that's happening in our allied countries, who we're enforcing these economic conditions on them, massive strike waves, huge protests and riots, infrastructure damage. Don't hear about it all that much. Do not hear about it all that much in the media. Or it's never used to build this narrative about how deeply unsatisfied and unhappy people are with the economic or cultural or political or social conditions that they're living under. No one is going on the media being like, what is going on? What is wrong with the France government? Clearly the people want to overthrow the entire system and want a brand new system. Obviously. We don't talk about these things in the same way. But when there's a single SOS Cuba protest, then we got to have multi-weeks of commentary about this. Kind of interesting how that works.
calling for effectively maintaining in place nuclear reactors in Germany. The Greens, developed as an anti-nuclear party, absolutely collapsed their politics. They don't seem to have an independent politics of integrity.
I think the anti-nuclear movement was like a op, wasn't it? Like it was. There was our entire environmental movement was based in that in the 80s. At the very least, a huge mistake. Yeah.
Germany is one example.
And I don't mean there was a big anti-nuclear weapons movement, which was great and correct, but a huge anti-nuclear energy movement.
But there are others. I mean, if you look at Italy, for instance, a far right government has been elected. Before she was elected, Meroni was very strongly against, NATO, and made strong comments. But once elected, she had to also bend her knee to Washington. These contradictions are real. I mean, these governments, on the one side, there they are, trying to establish some independence, marginal independence, because there's a groundswell of pressure in their countries. On the other side, they feel obliged. They are, in a way, trapped by history into this alliance with the United States. And none of them seem to have the confidence to say, well, look, we want to create an independent European approach, or we want to create an independent Italian approach. No, they're all in a way tied in. And let's face it, okay, after World War II, United States created a security architecture that yoked these countries. I mean,
Mhm.
Italy is still home to a large number of US military bases.
Right.
So is Germany. This is real stuff.
Exactly. And of course, I mean, we also can't forget that there's things that we don't know that go on, although sometimes we find out about it. I mean, remember when the NSA Snowden documents came out, we learned that the US was spying on its German counterparts. So the US even spies on its allies. I mean, there's all kinds of things that the US does to make sure that the policies don't change. And of course, it really speaks to the fact that many of these countries aren't as sovereign as they claim to be. Um, I also wanted to ask you, VJ, what's the significance of the G7 in all this, and then versus an organization like the BRICS Alliance?
The G7 is really interesting. It was founded in France in 1974 by seven of, at the time, the leading industrial countries: Japan, France, Italy, United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and West Germany. They were the seven countries. The purpose of the G7 in 1974 was to tackle a couple of things. Number one, the so called oil crisis. When the Gulf Arab states used oil as a weapon against the presence of the Israeli state and what they were doing to the Palestinians and so on. That oil weapon of 1973 was very significant. It put a lot of pressure on Western European and North American countries. United States had cars lined up for miles outside gas stations at the time. So the G7 met at first to discuss the oil situation, but linked to that was the attempt by third world countries to push the new international economic order into the United Nations, which actually passed in 1974, calling for new dispensation, a new quote unquote rules based order for trade and investment and so on. So that's why the G7 started. It was basically a little club of advanced industrial countries who wanted to privately discuss how to maintain their power over the world, not allow these third world countries to become equal. I remember reading for a book I wrote called The Poorer Nations. I read the transcripts from the first 1974 meeting of the G7, which you can see at the Gerald Ford Library. I sat and poured through those transcripts. So interesting to see the kind of quote unquote conspiracy that these G7 countries were putting forward against the third world. Well, over the years, the G7 has matured. Today, the G7, which comprises 10% of the world's population but holds 50% of the world's wealth, tells you a lot about who these people are. And they claim to be, in a way, the executive of the world. They want to and have sidelined the United Nations. They think they should make the decisions for the world. During the world financial crisis, these countries suffered enormous anxiety. So they went running to surplus holding countries like India, China, and so on, and said, look, if you put money into our financial system, some of your surplus, bail us out, in fact, then we'll close down the G7 and we'll create an expanded executive called the G20, which will include your countries, India, China, Indonesia, Mexico, and so on. Well, the G20 was established, but after the financial crisis went away, they didn't shut down the G7. They continued it. It's very interesting betrayal. So you now have a G7 and a G20. The G7 has an incredibly destabilizing approach to the world because, the US keeps talking about rules based system, but on what basis? What are the rules? Who established the rules? Are they consensus rules? Well, the
And who has to
G7
follow the
doesn't
rules and
have
who
a
doesn't?
charter, from the world. It doesn't follow any rules. They make the rules. They make the rules, and then they execute the rules. At least the United Nations General Assembly is guided by the UN Charter, which is the most important consensus document in the planet, because all governments are treaty bound to follow the UN Charter. Whether they do or not is separate, but they're treaty bound. The G7 has no such document, even to hold the G7 members accountable, let alone accountable to the rest of the planet. And yet they behave like the rulers. It's a kind of global monarchy. This is not a global democracy. In fact, I could say it again that the G7 is a monarchical organization. They behave like kings. They behave like unelected kings who don't have even a Magna Carta to guide them.
Well, I mean, and then just real quick, if like, what's the sort of other side of that is this BRICS alliance that a lot of countries keep actually asking if they can join, especially this year, like this.
As we've been talking about it as well, and there's been news about this lately, that even like the Saudis are getting on board, getting off, like starting to explore other alternatives to the U.S.-led financial system. Even their own staunch reactionary allies that they've carefully cultivated and carefully kept in place. Even under Bolsonaro, Brazil was still squishy on this. That's how dire things are getting for the U.S. empire. Even their most fervent allies are starting to explore these other alternatives. No, all these neo-imperialist intergovernmental organizations are falling apart and losing legitimacy. No! You hate to see it.
This year, I feel like every few weeks or every month, there's like some other country that's like requesting to be a member of BRICS. Can you speak to the importance of BRICS in acting as like the sort of anti G7?
Well, it's interesting. In this conversation we're having, Rania, we keep returning to the world financial crisis 2007, 2008, because it was as a consequence of those crises that in 2009, the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa met in Russia to talk about creating a different body that would discuss issues of trade, development, the world financial system, and so on. In fact, Dmitry Medvedev, in the opening of the initial BRICS meeting, talked about the need for a new kind of financial system, because they were reflecting on the collapse of the Western dominated financial system. So BRICS has its origins there. In fact, the pre origins of BRICS were India, Brazil, and South Africa, around things like subsidies in the north for agriculture, very unequal subsidies.
Okay, wait. I got a question here, because I don't know, for anyone that's been around this stream, since like I started the stream, like what, and 2.5 hours ago or whatever, there was this like troll person in here originally that was like, "What's the fake news you're sharing today?" That because there was the news of that apartment building that was blown up in Ukraine, and there was that viral tweet the other day about we should be allowed to just talk about killing all the Russians because this barbarism. And I just saw this. Like, that was like, I didn't mean in the stream like for months, but just for today. I just saw this Zelensky advisor, Alexei Arestovich, has resigned after admitting on live TV that Ukrainian air defense was responsible for destroying the apartment in Dnipro. That was literally earlier this day. Some guy that was like one of these pro-Ukraine guys is like, what's the fake news today? That NATO was responsible for blowing that up? Blowing up that apartment building? Remember that? And I don't know if you remember that tweet the other day. The lady was like, we should be allowed to just talk about murdering all the Russians because of the barbarism. This is the kind of barbarism that they're engaging in. This morning, Arestovich issued an apology on Telegram, promising to be stricter with the information I voiced from now on. Apparently, it didn't work. Just 3 hours later, he wrote, "I want to show an example of what civilized behavior is, a fundamental error, then resignation."
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anyway.
Hello friends, not fellow cult members friends.
Thank you, Pathogen. Thank you, Pathogen, for the 8 months tier 1. Very much appreciated. We should comment on when Ukraine does it, it's a whoopsie. When Russia does it, it's cold-blooded genocide. That's right. And that's not to downplay terrible things that have happened in the Russia-Ukraine war. There's no doubt that Russia has done violent things in this war. It's a war. That's what happens in wars, and it's fucking terrible, and it's fucking tragic. That's why I don't understand these people coming to this stream, for example, trying to do these kind of gotchas, suggesting that I think that kind of thing is okay. When I and others have been saying for months, this war should end. We should be supporting ending this war. We should be supporting having some kind of dialogue or diplomacy so the violence stops. And the same people that are saying, like, we need to just have an endless flow of arms going into Ukraine, going to God knows who, and perpetuate this conflict for years if we have to, they're the ones that are like promoting this kind of violence, you know? That's, of course, when you're in a war, these terrible violent things happen. And I don't think anyone should be encouraging that. No one wants that to happen. Except these people who simultaneously criticize me and others for having different viewpoints about this. They're the ones that are promoting this endless flow of arms and troops and further involvement and further escalation, which is just going to lead to more violence, more bombings, more civilians dying. I don't understand the disconnect. I do not understand the disconnect. You know? We're the tankies because we want the war to end, and they're the sensible liberals because they just think we should have an endless flow of arms into this conflict. And that's the only possible alternative or solution we should have. That's been the case this whole time, totally. They fuck up, blame Russia, libs get genocidal, they eventually backtrack, and libs continue defending the initial lie. Absolutely. The whole conflict now, it's been almost a year of this. We're coming up on an entire year of this now. And it's been the same thing every time. And the whole discourse around it from moment one has been unbelievably deranged.
And the intellectual property rights that prevented a country like India, which produces a lot of pharmaceuticals, to sell cut price drugs in Africa and South America. I mean, that's the prehistory of BRICS. So all of these issues came together in BRICS. Now, what's interesting is, yes, you're right. People are applying to enter BRICS. Argentina.
Would you feel the same way if it was XYZ country attacking our country? Well, I think yes, I would, because I would like to think that I would recognize the role that other geopolitical powers have played in provoking the thing in the first place. You know, if there was a foreign country that was pumping weapons and arms and training into a part of Canada, leading to this kind of like civil war that ultimately turned into a larger war, I would probably be pointing to that as well, right? And pointing to the role that these outside imperialist forces have played in escalating things to that point in the first place. And again, there are many Ukrainians that would agree with that, but we don't hear about them in the media. We don't hear from them in the viral posts. They don't get interviewed on CNN or MSNBC or anywhere else. In fact, if they're in Ukraine, they get taped to flagpoles if they get found out for articulating this viewpoint as being Russian sympathizers. You know, it doesn't mean that you're okay with the violence that's happening, but you do have to have a sort of understanding of what's causing it in the first place, though.
Perhaps Iran and others, Turkey, very interested in this. But that's only one part of the game. The other is we're seeing a renewed interest in regionalism. The new government in Brazil, which will be sworn in on the 1st of January, will have a finance minister, Fernando Haddad, who, when I met him in October, talked at great length about the importance of South American integration and why Brazil is going to drive an agenda through a new currency called the Sur, the South. So you're seeing in South America the revival of CELAC, the community of Latin American and Caribbean countries, which had been set up by Brazil and Mexico in an earlier period, but now revived by Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador in Mexico. In Asia, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization again has expanded. It's got about 40% of the world's people in it. Russia, China, all the Central Asian states, Iran, India, Pakistan, Turkey has applied for membership, and so on. So there's a kind of interest in both regionalism, the SCO in Asia or CELAC in South America, and this sort of, larger than regional bloc, which is BRICS. These are emerging in a way because they understand that they need to build some kind of political strength to confront the G7 and the collapsing institutions of the G7, including the Bretton Woods institution. So, I mean, I think we're at an interesting period, and I don't want to overanalyze this. Let it be. Let's watch and let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens indeed. And in that sense, though, because before we were talking about the importance of China to Europe and all of the manufacturing that Europe depends on in China and all of the trade with China, is it even possible at this point for Europe to decouple from China without destroying itself?
That's a very good
Looking at
question.
the consequences of Europe.
Is it possible for the United States to decouple themselves without destroying themselves? Very good question. And who does China have to thank for that? It's almost like, that's a very funny pause face on VJ. It's almost like that was part of the thinking in China when it came to opening up their economy in the first place. Maybe some of those people were making a little bit smarter or more forward-thinking decisions than we sometimes give them credit for, or they got credit for at the time. I wonder.
Europe trying to cut itself off from Russia, which have already been so dire. And that was that was just really, they needed Russia for the gas. With China, it's like for everything else. Could they survive that even? And then it begs the
Are you a Quebecer? So asked Ninja Can. Kind of. I was born here. I grew up in Eastern Ontario for most of my life. I moved back here to go to university, and I've lived in Quebec for 20 years. So technically, yes, I'm a Quebecer. Culturally, not really. If that answers your question.
Because I don't think they could, but I'd like to hear your answer. But that also raises the question of, isn't it the U.S. also shooting itself in the foot because you're literally weakening your own allies?
It do seem like that.
I mean, this is a question that one needs to ask the Europeans. It's a really important question to ask Bossells and others who live, as you said, quoting Bossells, in the garden. I mean, how long is it going to remain a garden when you don't recognize that the rest of the world is pretty interestingly developed, and you still think of the rest of the world as a jungle, stunningly arrogant? They need to actually reflect deeply, because frankly, China could live without Europe, but can Europe live without China? I mean, China has integrated with Russia, with India. Despite the border disputes between India and China, relations between the two countries are at a different level. China is rooted in Southeast Asia. If you look at the GDP projections for the next 10-15 years, 7 countries in the top 10 GDP are going to be in Asia, including Indonesia, Vietnam, and so on. 7 out of 10.
Crazy.
The center of gravity.
It's an amazing to think as well. Like, this is with the relentless imperialism and with the relentless interference on the part of the US. Imagine what Asia would look like today if it had been allowed to develop as it was developing. You'd have China, you'd have Indonesia, you'd have Vietnam, Korea, all pretty much on the same page, and for the last several decades without worrying about the relentless interference. It's pretty incredible to imagine.
Is moving from the Atlantic Ocean to Asia. That's just a fact. I mean, that's all GDP projections are showing that.
You'd still have the Soviet Union as well, yeah.
Does Europe want to be left out and become, in a way, I'm not going to use the words jungle and garden, but does it want to become marginal to the processes of world history? If you're a Hegelian and you look, when Hegel says the Geist, the spirit moves from east to west, or maybe the spirit has decided to get on its horse and ride the other direction across the steppes, to abandon the light of Europe and go elsewhere. I mean, Europe has to reflect on this. Do they want to be a part of what's happening in the world, or do they want to marinate in their arrogance? That's their issue.
That's a really good question. And that does speak to, you mentioned some pushback.
Marinate in
from
their
people,
arrogance. I like that.
Although maybe pushback is too generous of a term, or too hyperbolic, but there has been some light, hesitation, I'll put it that way, from people like Macron, like you mentioned. And also, I mean, even more recently, you have the German and French finance ministers expressing concern quite openly about the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, which is pretty discriminatory in its production requirements that basically threaten
No,
to
they will
cause
not
the
reflect on this.
industrialization of Europe. And then you also have, I saw there was an article recently, I mean, this is just something from today, the CEO of this one leading Dutch semiconductor equipment firm called ASML, he openly accused the US of using the semiconductor sanctions that it placed on China as a pretext to steal market share from European firms. Do you think European leaders of both, not just politicians, but also industry, are capable of pushing back here? I mean, I guess it's just a kind of speculation, but it does seem like at some point, if your industries are threatened with potential collapse and the US is clearly making the rules so they can use this as an opportunity for its companies to profit over European companies, at some point, someone, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Europeans will really just roll over or if they'll push back. But there are some trends that they might.
Well, let's leave Europe for a minute and then come back to it. Let's look at East Asia. The United States has developed this. You use the example of a semiconductor company, a chip manufacturing company. The US has pushed against manufacturers in South Korea and Taiwan, leading manufacturers of chips. Also, Japan, they are part of the so called Chips 4 Alliance, has pushed back on these countries, essentially cutting their feet out from under them because they rely on the Chinese market to buy their chips. What are they supposed to do if you start sanctioning and saying you can't sell chips to China and so on? What are these companies going to do? A lot of problems for the United States managing these alliances. On the one side, you want South Korea, you want the province of Taiwan, you want Japan and so on to be on side with the US in its Cold War against China. On the other side, all these countries, South Korea's largest trading partner is China. Japan's large trading partner is China. Australia's largest trading partner is China. But the US has been trying to essentially break them off from their own realities. Well, they're having a tough time in East Asia.
That's the amazing, I mean, it's amazing thing seeing Australia trying to get tough on China at the behest of the US. It's amazing how completely opposed to their own interests it is. And they're just like, oh, mate, yes, sir. I can't do the accent. I can do many accents, as you know, but I can't do that one. It is very funny, though, to see these people just willingly going against their own interests. And there's nothing else that helps you understand what imperialist power really is and who has it.
It's increasingly,
and Canada as well, for sure. Canada as I argued earlier.
European company that, for instance, manufactures high-tech goods in Hubei province in China, where are they going to start manufacturing this? At one point, there was a delusion saying that, oh, these companies can just move to India. Let me tell you, it's not that easy.
Even India is not as on board with the US-led economic order as they would like.
That's because literacy rates are much higher. These are the reforms of the Chinese Revolution. In a place like India, nutrition rates are low. That creates a lot of problems because you have poor sewage management. People get sick more often. That means workers are not coming to work every day, healthy and focused and had a good night's sleep and so on. So it's not so easy to move a factory from Hubei province to even Tamil Nadu, which has the best workforce in India. You can't do that easily. So you're going to have to cut your nose to spite your face, in other words. And it's not just Europe, but a number of US allies in East Asia are really sitting on the horns of a dilemma. Do they follow what Biden is telling them to do? In September, the Chips for Alliance essentially was really struggling to accept what Biden wanted to do. Or do you try to chart an independent path? I don't know. They are actually caught on the horns of a dilemma. I don't agree with their dilemma, but I do sympathize with them because there's no easy answer for them. Of course, it's easy if they break with the yoke around their neck, but that changes the rules of the game.
Right. And I mean, it is interesting to watch. I mean, at least certain
It's like
countries
Ash in Alien. I do not envy you for your chances, but you have my sympathies.
maybe wouldn't have expected to. It's not like they're cutting off ties with the U.S., but like I'm talking, I mean, in this case, Saudi Arabia, for example, right? We just saw that the Chinese president visited Saudi Arabia, and you saw
God, I gotta
MBS
go
really
soon.
rolling out the red carpet, partly as a snub to the Biden administration, but also you've seen Saudi Arabia refuse to increase oil production when they were asked to by the U.S. To help control prices.
Something I mentioned earlier, and you know what? I can't get to the rest of this question. I was talking a few minutes ago, though, about how Saudi Arabia is an interesting part of this equation, how even they are sort of starting to question this U.S.-led economic order. Saudi Arabia, India, all these big Western allies that they've been carefully cultivated. Even Brazil under Bolsonaro are starting to question this U.S.-led economic order. Folks, I got to go in about 10 minutes. I'm sitting at 11 out of 35 subs. So I can't get to that last question. I do have to go pick up my kid from school in 10 minutes. And we do need to, ideally, get a little bit closer to the good old sub goal. And I must ask you one final time that if you enjoy this content and you enjoy the commentary,
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
If you enjoy the commentary that I do here on twitch.tv, if you enjoy the TRRS community, the number must go up every day. That's the one thing. It's inescapable. We must make the number go up. So if you enjoy this content, such as Bin Laden is hero, not a stance that I agree with, obviously, but an interesting name. Thank you, Bin Laden is hero. Valued community member for the gifted sub to Vexing Thoughts. Their first give sub in the channel for brand new community member.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bin Laden is hero. My goodness. And thank you, Comrade Social Distancing, as well, for the gifted sub.
You can count on me.
And for all the support.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Donnie Durr, for the 9 months of Bezos bucks. Thank you, Donnie Durr. And like Donnie Durr, if you're lurking, if you're watching right now and you're not subscribed and you've got a Twitch Prime account, you can use your Twitch Prime account to subscribe to this channel absolutely free of charge, which would be really wonderful. Get the best emotes on this platform. If you enjoy this kind of content, join the community. And again, if you like this program and you like to tune in every day and listen to this kind of content, the only way it stays on the air is with the generosity of our kind and wonderful community members. So please, if you can, subscribe to the channel. You can gift subscriptions. You can gift friend coin. You can leave a tip. Any little bit helps. And just a few generous chatters could at least get us a little bit closer to the good old sub goal. I have about 6 minutes to go. I got about 6 minutes to go. And again, I prefer to just do the show and not have to talk about this so much. But because I kind of have a hard cutoff today, I do have to see what I can do. See what we can do to make number go up. Twitch Prime, I think he means Amazon Prime. No, Carnoba, it's not entirely, because if you have an Amazon Prime account, you can convert that into a Twitch Prime gaming sub. Is that it? Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what it is. You can use you have a Prime sub, okay? You get a Prime sub. That's all. Proletariat is looking for a gift sub as well. Prime Gaming is the newer name. Well, I can't be asked to keep up with all these changes, all this kind of
You
stuff.
can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk.
How am I supposed to know this? I've only been doing this for 2 entire years now. Thank you again to Bin Laden is Hero for another gifted sub. Very kind of you. That puts you actually in the chaos zone of the friendship triangle. Twitch's only clout access. No, sorry, trickle down clout and friendship access tiered reward system. Bin Laden coming in the clutch yet again. Rob is now getting money from the Saudis. That's why I've had a softening stance. I've had a softening stance on this over the last couple of months because I'm starting to get that Saudi investment fund cash. I don't have a saved image of the triangle. I haven't done the whole triangle thing lately. I haven't been leaning on it quite as hard. A second Bin Laden hero sub has hit Rob's Twitch. Oh my goodness. TRRS brought to you by MBS. He's progressive, folks. He's progressive. He's changing the country. Okay? Women are driving now. Or soon. It's getting better. He's enacting his progressive vision. Why don't we just give him a chance? That's all I'm asking. Why don't we just give him a chance? He allows WWE to go in there. What more do you want? Okay, well, I'm going to get going. This was a good stream. I enjoyed it. I'm gonna have to crack the whip tomorrow though. Now I'm gonna have to really crack the whip.
You're gonna have good old Rob to
maybe that's what some of you freaks are into. Maybe that's what you like. Maybe you need me to get tougher with you. Is that it? Thank you, Bin Laden is Hero, for the 3 gifted subs. Thank you. We're assembling a data and a group of consultants to determine whether we should do public research next year on the women drivers question. And you're out there criticizing from your comfortable perch just because they sometimes still crucify people. Well, you know, we need more data points.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Freelance Communist, for the gifted sub to Ninja Can. First gifted sub in the channel. Thank you, Freelance Communist. I appreciate that. It's all right, comrades. If there's anyone that should not feel bad about contributing to this show, it is our friend, Comrade Social Distancing. Please do not feel bad. You've contributed a whole lot to this show, and I appreciate it a lot. It's okay, Lana. That's what we like. We like when Lana gets heated. That's called going Lana mode, and it's something that I support, frankly. Okay, so I'm really going to have to crack the whip tomorrow. I'm going to be Mr. Hardass tomorrow. You can count on that. I'm going to crack it good. Thanks again for watching this stream, everyone. I enjoyed this one. I'll be back tomorrow. Number of great things coming up on the show. I'll let you know how that email to VJ comes. I'm sure I can rebook VJ to get him to come back on the show. That's going to be great. Tomorrow, though, no more Mr. Nice Guy, okay? No more Mr. Nice Guy. You're getting the full friendship triangle pitch tomorrow. And I was going to stare uncomfortably at the camera. At these chatters that are using me. You just want me to come on and do the content day in, day out. Just come and talk to you and have our little chats day in, day out. The freeloaders. I'm coming. I'm going to be naming and shaming people. All right? Give my regard to Left Flank Vets. I'll talk to you folks tomorrow. Take care.